Hello, my fellow readers. This is Dark Symphony 777 with another fanfiction review. As always, the link to this story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts of the story and any future fanfictions you want me to read or review. Now, the story I am reviewing this time is Ties That Bind. It's written by Semiramis. I more than likely butchered that name. I'm just trying to pronounce it how I can pronounce it. And actually, I found out the author himself actually sent me this this story. It was in a thread by Clownfish TV, which is this really cool YouTube channel. I recommend them. They were talking about the She-Ra reboot being a $1 million fan fiction, which I actually agree with. I did see a couple clips of the show. I didn't see the whole show, but I saw a couple clips. Plus, I listened to like the interviews and stuff like that, and it really does come off as like a very, very over the top, edgy fan fiction. Until I actually go and watch the entire show, I don't know for sure. I don't know 100%, but it looked very obvious. Like it was $1 million. It was like a who knows how much money fan fiction. So this story is based in World of Warcraft. Like everyone knows what Warcraft is. Like everyone knows what World of Warcraft is. It is one of the most famous games to have ever been created. Like I don't even play PC games that much, and even I know of World of Warcraft. I saw commercials of it everywhere. My favorite South Park episode is actually the World of Warcraft. We have to save the world of Warcraft. I really love that episode. And so it was actually pretty funny. But anyway, the story, I don't know how to say this, but this is kind of a weird story. Not so much as I can describe the plot and the characters. I can do that to a point, but it's just this is one of those very, very niche types of stories. So before I get into that, let's just talk about the plot because it's not be worth anything to talk about the characters or the pacing. So the plot is basically this guy named, what's his name? Darian Morgraine. He basically works for Lich and he got himself freed, and he wants to protect this lady named Bridget, and it kind of it's not really a long story. It's only like 11,000 words. He wants to protect Bridget from people who are trying to assassinate her. So he sets up this whole thing where he gets her to like hide away, and he replaces her with a doppelganger to take the kill. And so he protects her, and she's like, "Well, I still want to be a warrior. I don't want to be like a dead mother or stuff like that. I want to be a warrior." So the story kind of is just some conversations, and it ends with Bridget joining forces with Darian. It's fine for what it is. I will talk about it more once I get to like the big part of it. But as for what it is, it's fine. Pacing, it's paced fine. Like there's nothing wrong with the grammar, there's nothing wrong with the characters. But again, I'll talk more in depth about that in a little bit. But here is in terms of the pacing and the writing style, it's fine it's actually pretty good for what it is. The writing style is actually it's really well written because the author actually recommended me this not for the plot but for the actual writing itself. If you wanted me to say how good do I think the story is from a writing standpoint, it's actually very well done from a writing standpoint. Here is where the praise ends. This is one of those stories that really requires people to know the lore. And there are stories, there are games that do this, most notably, Dark Souls, because there is a plot in Dark Souls. It is just so out of the way. You have to just you have to play constantly, just talking to every single person, exploring every single crevice, just to get all the bits and pieces enough that you can actually get the plot just going to the point that to help other players, they actually made a full-on video chronicalizing the entire plot of Dark Souls. And when it comes to stories like this, they're very, very niche. Like take S.D. Perry. S.D. Perry is an author who's most well known for writing Resident Evil novels, and he wrote novelizations of the first 4 Resident Evil games: Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, and Code Veronica. Now you'd write something for a character, like group of characters. You write something for Resident Evil, and you're already sectioning off some of the people because there are going to be more people, because majority of the fan base is going to be towards the Resident Evil fans. And then you make it a novelization. You take that large section of Resident Evil fans, you actually cut them out. You cut the majority of them and becomes like a small fraction of the fan base, because a majority of those would rather play the games and enjoy the story that way than read the story and enjoy it that way. That's kind of the whole thing with novelizations. And then have stories like Ties That Bind. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. There are some stories that are supposed to explain certain parts of the plot and kind of go in the background of it, and it's kind of headcanon-y, but these types of stories are incredibly niche because you have to know the background of the characters. You have to understand the lore of the game, or more specifically, certain parts of the game. And the more stuff you add and in terms of detail without kind of explaining it to people who don't know the lore, then it just becomes more and more niche and becomes harder and harder to read. When I read this story, and it's only like 11,000 words, so it's not a long story, I didn't know what was going on. Okay, so I'm just like, okay, there's this guy named Darian who cares about this lady named Bridget, and so, he saves her life from being killed, and he wants to help her out, but she's like, I'm going to be a knight. But it's like, outside of those basic details, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know any of these characters. I had to actually look up these characters online just to figure out who they were. Oh, it really makes it hard to quantify how to review this story, because this is just an incredibly niche story, and I don't know any of the details. It looks like you have to know many, many different things not only about this Darian person, but the Lich King, these rings, Bridget. There's so much that you have to do research on, that it would be unquantifiable to be able to figure everything out. Hence why this is going to be somewhat of a short review. That makes it very hard to say how to recommend this story, because this story does read like you're supposed to know a lot of the background behind the story, which if you do, then I guess you might like it. But if you don't know all the details, all the connecting pieces of what the story is talking about, how it plays out, who the characters are, then I really cannot recommend it. It's too neat. It would be so much better if Semi had some way of kind of easing us into the world, kind of telling us about the characters, kind of going into more detail on the items and stuff like that, just so people who don't really know a lot can at least kind of feasibly figure out what is going on. That's pretty much my main problem with the story. It's just the story relies so much on the readers knowing specific details and specific people and specific items, and a lot of different background stuff in a specific part of World of Warcraft. And World of Warcraft is freaking huge. Like it's gigantic in terms of lore, in terms of world and everything. So it kind of makes sense for these kind of stories to exist. It's the same thing with Dark Souls or any game that has a very very vague storyline that's very up for interpretation. Like not to mention with World of Warcraft in particular, there's comic books, there's novels, they're all canon. There's just so much that you have to figure out that if unless you're one of those guys that is obsessed with lore, I cannot in good faith recommend this story simply on those grounds. However, I'm going to put a caveat. If you are knowledgeable enough on the lore, then actually go ahead. It's actually it's written pretty well. It looks like the characters, I can kind of tell the characters and the plot and what the author's going for. It's just I don't know enough about the actual lore, and I actually I tried to figure out the lore. I just couldn't figure out what was going on specifically with the rings and Alakatressa and Darien and all that stuff. It's one of those stories that you need to be knowledgeable on the world, extremely knowledgeable. And it's that nicheness because there are some people out there who really only play a game simply for the lore. Like when COD Zombies came on and they started putting a story into the game. People would literally only play the maps simply to find out the bits and pieces of lore that's going on in the background and everything connecting and trying to piece together an actual storyline. So there are people who only really play the games for the lore and the story. So it's very niche because that's only really a subset of people. Like when I play COD Zombies, I basically just play for the fun. Like I mean I did get like the Call of the Dead Easter egg done, but that's like so monumentally small it's not even funny. But I did like the story. I did like what the author was going for. I'm only not recommending this simply because of how niche the story is. You have to have so much knowledge of what's going on behind the scenes in the actual lore of World of Warcraft. I don't even know where to start. I literally looked up Darien's name. I read through the WoW wiki page, like trying to figure out and trying to connect the dots. And I still couldn't figure out what was going on in the story. Probably, if I did know what was going on, I probably would say it was probably a good story, or not. It depends. But I'm only going to be able to call it as I see it. This is just too niche a story that I can recommend. If there's anything I would add to the story, I would just say there should be some way of lightly helping people who are not that knowledgeable out and just giving them like a little background on what's going on. So that way people who are who's not in like as knowledgeable as the lore as probably the author is, so that way you kind of get a better feel of what's going on in the story, what's going on with the characters, what's going on with everything. If I'm gauging this, like the author mainly just wanted this gauged based on the writing. The writing the writing's good. It's just I wish I knew what was going on, and that's really all I can say because again, the story just relies so much on knowing specific parts and characters and storylines in World of Warcraft that I don't know about. Because while I do know of the game, I don't know anything about the actual lore outside of like maybe like the Leroy Jenkins thing. That's like the only thing I know about. I know intimately about the World of Warcraft. That's literally it. That shows my lack of knowledge of the game. If you are knowledgeable about the lore, go right ahead. You would probably like it. You probably not. I like to hear what other people think if they know the lore or not. See what they think of that. But I cannot recommend it simply because of how much knowledge you need to know to understand what's going on. That's literally it. That's the only thing that I don't like about the story. It's so restrictive of the readers having to know all these things to even get what's going on in the story. It's very, very niche. It's very, very restrictive. If there was some way you could help people who don't really know the lore, don't really know that specific lore with Darien and the Lich King and the Scarlet Onslaught, whatever it's called, then it would help. Then it would honestly help. Yeah, I know this is like a really, really short one, but that's really all I can say at this moment because I just don't know what's going on. I don't know the characters that well. I don't know the world because again, it comes off as the author wanting, like telling a story that only like certain specific people would be able to know. So it kind of makes things hard. I don't even have a favorite part because I just don't know what it's like. I mean, I learned about Barry and Morgaine. I mean, I guess you could say that would be my favorite part because I found out something. I did research. That's kind of sad. So that has been Dark Symphony 777 with my review of Ties That Bind and cut.